another episode of All Things Conflict. I think these series are going really well. I've really enjoyed our guests. And today I have for you Hervé de Trogoff, who is the CEO of an international consultancy called Accuracy that work in big business, large industry, working on infrastructure projects and all the trials and tribulations and conflicts that go along with that. So let's begin. Hervé, wow, thank you for doing this. It's so wonderful. How long have we known each other?
Well, thank you for having me. I met you in 2018, I think, at a conference.
Oh, right. Yes, that's right. Yeah. God, what a journey we've been on together.
hmm
It's certainly been very life enriching to know you and to work with you and to, share our sort of parallel lives, if you like.
Mm.
So, you're a partner in an international firm called Accuracy, and Accuracy works mainly in construction industry, and sort of big industry and big business, and you see a lot of conflict. And
Yeah.
so I wondered if you might, give us a bit of background and talk a bit about that for us.
Yes, sure. So Accuracy today works in a lot of industries, but as you said, in heavy industries. And I've been looking after the construction industry, and I've also, which is a second part of my life in Accuracy, been an executive in the firm over the recent years. Um, but the construction industry is fascinating. Having been on live construction projects for many years and now being an advisor to help those projects get better or go through disputes, it's a very atypical industry. The stakes are very high, both for states and private investors, and things go wrong the whole time, which of course is a recipe for conflicts.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are the types of things that go wrong? I think that probably would put some colour onto the picture.
If you think about a complex piece of infrastructure, it used to be very technical and factually complex. Today, it's more than that. It's technologically incredibly complex. A new hospital, a new prison, a new nuclear power station. And it's a one off. So, what that leads to is impossibility to predict time and money. So, people make plans and they gather resources and they try their best. And then it takes way longer and it costs way more than expected. And the question is always, who's going to pick the bill?
So I have this picture in my head of a piece of elastic that's just being stretched, and where is it going to snap?
Yes. Where is it going to snap? Or are parties intelligent enough to make way for the elasticity and somehow turn a difficulty into a shared problem that they can resolve? But it's a really good analogy.
Yeah, so I was thinking about if you put, you talk about, technology and building and all sorts of things. And around that, it's people. One day it might not be people, but let's not go there on this. Maybe we'll be having that conversation in a few episodes' time. But, there are always going to be people. And, one of the things I've learned is if you put groups and groups of people together with some kind of shared interest or some kind of common purpose or some kind of goal or achievement in mind, the expectation that you can put hundreds of people, if not thousands of people together, and they're just going to turn up and do it all seamlessly and it's all going to be fine. When you step back, I mean, that's a sort of preposterous idea, isn't it?
It is, and yet it seems to take a lifetime for human beings to realize that's the case. If I go back to my industry, and I was one of those young, motivated, enthusiastic engineer, you spend many years with a strong belief that if you're making drawings that are understandable and you make a plan that's understandable and you put everyone's brain to the task, then as you said, hundreds or thousands of people would just walk in harmony and deliver. And it takes tens and tens of years to realize that it's just not going to happen, because those human beings are so different and they don't understand each other from so many different perspectives, that it takes a lot more for things to progress in a way that's not chaotic.
So, what are some of the worst cases that you've seen? I mean, obviously, I don't want you to give away any confidentialities, but when does it go horrible? How does it start, and how does it escalate? And where have you seen things go disastrously wrong? And I suppose, what do we mean by disastrously wrong?
Disastrously wrong in my world is it starts from the inability to make a decision.
Oh,
In global infrastructure, whichever country or government requires the piece of infrastructure needs to make some decisions along the way to allow for the imperfections to be addressed. In some countries, and I won't name them, but in countries where public service is quite a dangerous profession, it can take you to prison or worse. Those leading those projects for the governments are so scared to make the wrong decisions that they're not making decisions. And that gap in time, which doesn't allow those hiccups to be addressed, are triggering disputes which will go on for many, many years. And I've got one in mind, a very large piece of infrastructure somewhere in the Middle East, which took 17 years after completion of the project, so nearly 30 years after they put the first spade in the ground, to be resolved. And when I look back, when the first signs of the dispute started, it was the inability to engage into a productive conversation, the inability to make small decisions, which eventually just led to that global disaster.
so that whole kind of kicking the can down the road
And hoping that someone else will make that decision for you. And if he has to be a judge or a tribunal somewhere, the likelihood is that you as a government officer will be retired, or if you're not retired, can always blame someone else for having made the wrong decision.
or you've changed job, of course.
Or you've changed jobs,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah, wow. So it seems to me when I listen to you speak that, as humans, and so not particular to any kind of, any country or any set of people, it seems though that we keep making the same mistakes over and over again in communicating with each other.
Yes. And for what I found that depressing, when I moved from active project management into dispute resolution, I had the hope that enlightened, so that the industry could enlighten itself, and that experience could allow for those mistakes not to be replicated. And I've realized over the years that it's either not progressing or not progressing quickly enough to be observable. Same mistake seems to be repeated. And I guess I've been more accepting of that now, and probably now trying to work at a different level, at a more human level rather than technical level, to address those kind of conflicts and improving some of the situations or outcomes.
So yeah, so with experience, I'm hearing you comes a sort of maturity and a sort of realization that there's a different depth to doing this work than just being very technical about it. And one of the things I heard you say was a lot of people won't make decisions because they're driven by fear from further up the food chain. But I'm also guessing ego and pride and wanting to win the argument, or trying to avoid shame and humiliation. I'm telling myself that those things come into it when you scratch below the surface of, whether the screw was the right size or not.
There's all of that. And going back to the word they use, depth, I think both depth and creativity are providing ideas or solutions that recreate the opportunity for good quality conversation. And I've got a great example in mind. A few years after finishing this disaster project I mentioned, I went on to advise another large government on a suite of about 120 complex projects, each of which was heading into the same direction. Creativity in that sense was allowing us as advisors on behalf of the government to start genuine conversations with all the counterparts of those 120 projects. And through a lot of pugnacity and genuine effort, create a setting which looked like a mediation. It was a very strict context of a contractual relationship, but we turned this into a very open and genuine conversation with most of the counterparts on all of those big projects. And some level of magic occurred. This kind of unusual creative setting wasn't mediation, but it wasn't strict contract negotiation, allowed the conversations that the government officials were too scared to have to be held through us, and allow for a lot of settlements and a lot of positive outcomes. So working at depth, but also bringing a lot of creativity and finding ways to open hearts when the brains are not able to engineer solutions.
Oh, I just want to repeat that back to you. Finding ways to open hearts when the brain's not doing its job. And that's such a different attitude. There's a completely different attitude in that, Hervé. Maybe you could speak to me about that, the journey from brain to heart.
If there was one thing that resonates with the works that we've done together and what I've learned from you and the dialogue roadmap, it's exactly that. What one can identify the reasons for poor communication or conflict escalation. So you've listed some of them: ego and pride, but the brain can twist itself for ever trying to undo this with a genuine willingness to work at that level. How to massage ego, how to not scratch someone's pride. But if we stay at the brain level, then we keep tiptoeing and work superficially with very short-term results. And what I've learned is that if we can shift the conversation to the emotions that are in the room at the time when this ego comes out or this pride comes out, then the quality of conversation is much greater and it's much quicker to get to a level of mutual understanding. And for someone who's always been quite impatient in business or negotiation or dispute resolution setting, I seem to have found a way to get to the heart of the matter much quicker by allowing my brain to shut down and allow or facilitate other brains to shut down so that the hearts can connect and communicate better. So yeah, that sounds a bit fluffy, but when you go through a hard business discussion and you're able to put that in practice, there is some magical outcome coming out of those.
Yeah, so for me, it's about allowing the heart into the room, because often when we think about work and business and leadership and all of that, it's all about logic and rationality and evidence-based this and all the rest of it. But at the end of the day, how a person feels will influence those logic and judgments. Or, as you say, the mind will want to play games, and then we get into manipulation and game playing and strategy. I watch a lot of stuff on YouTube, and you'll get the 10 things you can say when someone insults you, or and it feels very sort of military, that it's all about building up your arsenal of stuff that you can throw out. But actually nothing happens without some form of communication. And the more I can see you and the more you can see me, the easier then that oils the wheels. Is that what you're trying to sort of say? Is that, am I in the right place?
Yes, you're in the right place. And what comes to me just now is possibly the trait that I've seen as a further trigger for those kind of situation is maybe even beyond pride or ego is insecurity. So the brain continues to lead the conversation because the individual doesn't have the self-confidence or self-appreciation to allow for some of those vulnerabilities to come out. And those insecurities turn into a very logic-based, intellectually driven type of conversation. And I've seen a lot of this, both in the work that I do with clients, but also in my own organization, where the typical colleague is a very bright and well-educated person, but where there is a lot of insecurities, and that leads to quite a significant amount of misunderstandings and conflict.
And the brain is actually not very good at saying, I don't know, let's ask the heart, or let's ask the gut. The brain's not very good at doing that. It's taken its position as top dog and it doesn't sort of want to share the space.
It's not very good. He hasn't really been taught. Other than in some forms of spirituality that some of us have had access to from the young age, but some or many haven't. And he keeps saying to the guts or the heart that it's a weakness, not to let the brain lead the conversation. But it's also enthusing because when you are in that place, and that's what keeps me in business today, you are on the verge of opening a conversation of a decent or good quality. And that you're not wasting your time.
That's a word. That's a word I want to pick up on. A good quality conversation. So what, in your experience, does a good quality conversation consist of? I mean, I've got my idea of that.
The first is pace. A conversation that allows for time to settle. It's a face-to-face conversation. And it's a conversation where each side has time and space to let the other sides unload with as little judgment as possible, and an ability to, even in very disagreeable settings, have an ability to have a level of curiosity on what the other person is saying. Once these very basic ingredients are in place, I find that the conversation is often productive. And then at one level deeper, if one or both sides of the conversations are able to do more with what's coming to them, and bring empathy in the conversation, then the true quality comes in. So that's my experience of quality conversations in any friendship, professional, formal dispute resolution, social settings.
It's making a connection, isn't it?
Mm.
Connecting something.
Yes, you're right. It's exactly that. It's connecting with another human being, probably with no expectations of what's coming next, because that connection in itself will lead to something interesting, or even better, something useful or productive.
Mm. Yeah, well, I have lots of experiences of that, of just thinking about the human relationship, thinking about the connection, thinking about the here and now. And one of the things I just want to sort of backpedal a bit is, the brain, the heart, the gut, and those conversations. It's not an either or. For me, the brain being engaged and the heart being in partnership, when I translate that into words, is let's do a piece of business here. So, and, we may agree, we may disagree, some of it may be tough, we may hit stumbling blocks, and let's look after each other at the same time as we do this. So what happens to you when you hear me say that?
It brings me back into negotiation meeting or mediations when I was mediating a complex dispute, which led themselves to a fast resolution, because the individuals in the room were only focused on that piece of business that they wanted resolved for themselves or their organizations, and yet the care in the relationship, in the conversation that was happening on the day, was what led to that piece of business to take care of itself. And yet it's the exception rather than the norm. Maybe for many of the reasons that we've touched upon briefly over the past 20 minutes.
Yeah, so it's sad when I hear you say it's the exception rather than the norm. So what are the ways? What have we got to do? What's needed out in the world of business and leadership and commerce, or what's needed here to help people to understand. It's to support this paradigm shift, I suppose. And I suppose I'd like to add to that, because I think the paradigm shift's coming, like it or not. I think the paradigm shift is already showing up with younger people in workplaces who have a completely different view of the world. I mean, their world position, their world view about how the world should work for them is completely different to how I would have been at that age. So for me, that the sort of the snowball's already beginning, isn't it? Or maybe you don't think that, but I see a sort of snowball effect already beginning. And I'm wondering where it's going to take us, because I think it would be such a shame to have to fight these battles to make these changes through the law.
I aspire, in particular in my work environment, where I am more senior in age and responsibility than most others in the organization, to show that my intent is to have those well-meaning quality conversations. And I'm hoping to inspire through those. A coffee with someone who's coming for a work placement, a team meeting where there is a piece of business to be discussed, but the care for each individual in the room will be important. A board meeting where there's a lot of tension and some difficult decisions to be made, and yet we can find time for genuine care to each other. This is where I try to put my focus, because I do have concerns, and I don't really see a clear way forward at at society level or at government level, when I observe that the percentage of quality conversations in all of these difficult settings that I'm a witness to is the exception rather than the norm. Because, as you said, it is sad, and we'd like it not to be the case. So yes, I'm trying to influence where I can, and I don't really have great answers for the wider community, I suppose.
Well, I suppose that's, it's bigger than you and it's bigger than me, but being the change and modelling that which you want to see, it's a real gift, isn't it? It's a gift to the people that come into your realm or your sphere, and hopefully they experience something.
That's certainly my experience, and that's also a source of deep satisfaction and joy. I'm definitely in the second part of my, I don't know about life, but professional life certainly, and having those experiences on a daily basis brings a very high level of personal satisfaction and joy when they have an impact on others around you. So if anything, that's positive.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously this is sort of part of work I do, and there's no greater privilege, I would say, or honour to be invited to help somebody tease something out, and you see the shouting and the upset and the insults flying and the raised voices, and then guiding or providing a space in which they could see something different, and watching people who not 30 minutes ago were walking out of the room and never going to speak to anyone again, and and having to go at me for putting them through this or whatever, and then finding some connection, that word connection, and then looking at me and thanking me. It's like one minute they were going to murder me and the next minute I'm their best friend. It's an honor. And to witness that, to be able to witness what's possible, even in the most entrenched disputes, is very beautiful. And it changes the energy of your own life, doesn't it? It changes the energy around you.
It's slightly taking the conversation to a different direction, but the other source of deep difficulties that I've been observing in my organization recently is feeling of isolation. Teams working, we are working in about 27 different countries, and have very informal systems of communication, trusting that those informal means of communication will bring everyone up to speed and increase the level of collaboration and satisfaction. And yet the majority of individuals, especially further from the center, feel a very strong sense of isolation, because the likelihood is that they will hear about a very big piece of news affecting the organization around a coffee or and we'll feel that they're the last ones to be involved or told, or and for these, taking time, showing the person that the organization cares, alleviates enormously that sense of isolation, and have the same positive impact that the one you were just talking about in improving everyone's day, and also improving overall how the organization is running. I don't know what that came to mind that wasn't directly related to what you were saying, but that was another source of bringing quality conversations in day to day, which has very beneficial effects to the individual and the organization.
Well, it's nice to hear it because, obviously I've been into accuracy
Mm.
and I've seen your workplace and, and I know, and I could put my hand on my heart and say, I've seen that on the one hand, it is a business and you do, people are driven and they're given their tasks and their expectations. Um, because that's, how people progress their careers and all the rest of it. Firm frameworks. And I've also seen, not but, and both, and I've seen that when people are in need, when their lives take a different turn, or when there's something peculiar or different or whatever, I've seen that humanity kick in.
Thank you for observing this, because that's from the company being founded today, which is exactly 21 years. It's probably been the number one drive, of course, to deliver great value to whoever we work with, but with that level of humanity that is lacking in many organizations. Business at that level can be brutal, and unless we give that level of humanity, and particularly to some of the young adults who are joining the organization, then he feels that they've got too much to carry on their shoulder for a world that is going to be difficult for them and their families to live in. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no, it's been an absolute pleasure to be alongside you and to sort of partner up on many of these communication issues and to see what you're able to deliver and have, and continue to deliver. I mean, I've watched the company be very generous and, go way beyond what many employers would do. And, no, it's not an easy ride, but you don't pretend it is. So I love the honesty as well of that. And we're sort of coming to the end of our time together here. So if there was one message, you're a CEO, you're a partner, if there was a message to other people in your position out there in some of these hard-nosed industries, what would it be? What would you love people to hear? People who've got the power to make a difference.
Slowing down is the word that comes to mind. Maybe because I'm in the middle of a sabbatical, so I've just taken 6 months, and I've done that many times in my career to take time to reflect. But giving time for relationships and situations to settle is always a good starting point for a conversation that is tense to relax and for things to shift or to start shifting. So if there was one piece of advice that comes to mind in organizations where there's a lot of tension, is give a bit of time, make a bit of space, either on a day-to-day for each and every conversation, or for yourself when you are able to step back and get a bit of depth on some of those issues that are keeping you awake at night.
Amazing. Well, we've come to the end of our time, but this has been really rich and lovely, and thank you for doing this and gifting your time to us. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Maria.
Thanks.